Central Mexico's most watched volcano just produced its most visually striking moment of the week. The footage is striking. Popocatépetl, the Smoking Mountain, sits 55 kilometers east of Mexico City, 45 kilometers west of Puebla, and within 80 kilometers of more than 30 million people. On June 2nd, cameras captured the volcano throwing incandescent material from its crater while an electrical storm wrapped around its summit. By June 5th, the volcano had recorded more than 150 exhalations in 3 days. The alert level has not been raised. But the question has. The latest CENAPRED bulletins are stacked. On June 2nd, incandescent material thrown from the crater during an electrical storm. Protection Civil issued an ash dispersion warning for Puebla, Estado de México, and Morelos, depending on wind direction. On June 3rd, 48 exhalations, 280 minutes of exhalation sequences, 426 minutes of tremor over 7 hours, 1 explosion, 1 volcano-tectonic earthquake. On June 5th, 108 exhalations, accompanied by water vapor, volcanic gases, and ash. It is no longer a question of whether Popocatépetl is awake. It has been awake since 1994. The question is whether the visible activity of the past 4 days is another routine pulse or the start of something the routine pattern cannot contain. This is the volcano that has been continuously active since December 21st, 1994. This is the volcano that forced the evacuation of 41,000 people in December 2000. This is the volcano that the children of Central Mexico were told had returned to a steady rhythm. It is no longer the volcano that anyone in Central Mexico would describe as predictable. But here is the detail that tells the real story. CENAPRED, the Centro Nacional de Prevención de Desastres, was created in 1988, 3 years after the Mexico City earthquake. They took over Popocatépetl monitoring after the volcano reawakened in 1994. They have seismometers. They have gas spectrometers. They have thermal cameras. They have a webcam streaming the crater live, 24 hours a day. They have published daily bulletins for 32 consecutive years. They have called every yellow phase 2 pulse since the system was adopted in 2003. They have called every signal that is not turned into a phase 3 escalation. And on June 5th, their bulletin said the following: the Volcanic Alert Traffic Light remains at yellow phase 2. The families in San Pedro Nexapa watching the ash forecast on the morning news. The school directors in Atlixco checking visibility ratings before recess. The dairy farmers in Cholula deciding whether to cover the milk tanks. The flight controllers in Mexico City International Airport reading the SO2 plume models. And the climbers waiting at the lower trailhead for the closure boundary to lift. They have all been watching the same thing, the column above the crater, and the direction of the wind that moves it. For 32 years, Popocatépetl has been active. Yellow phase 2 has been the standing diagnosis. The pattern has. The question now is whether the visible glow of June 2nd, the long tremor of June 3rd, and the 108 exhalations of June 5th are part of the pattern or the beginning of a different one. This is how it happened. Popocatépetl has been in continuous yellow phase 2 activity for years. The exhalations, tremors, and ash emissions are routine, but the past 4 days have produced a cluster that was not routine. On the evening of June 2nd, an electrical storm developed around the summit. At the same moment, cameras pointing at the crater captured incandescent material being thrown out of the vent. The footage spread on social media before bulletins were issued. By the next morning, Protection Civil had issued an ash dispersion warning for Puebla, Estado de México, and Morelos. On June 3rd, CENAPRED's daily bulletin reported 48 exhalations, 280 minutes of exhalation sequences, 426 minutes of tremor, more than 7 hours, 1 explosion, and 1 volcano-tectonic earthquake. The tremor number was the one that stood out. 7 hours of internal seismic energy in a single 24-hour cycle is at the upper end of yellow phase 2 averages. 2 days later, on June 5th, CENAPRED reported 108 exhalations accompanied by water vapor, volcanic gases, and ash. The yellow phase 2 alert level was not raised. And the column above the crater has not stopped. What was producing that column was 3 things happening at the same time: magma releasing gas, steam pressurizing, fragments breaking loose. Popocatépetl is what volcanologists call a stratovolcano. The chamber underneath holds magma that is gas-rich and viscous. As the magma rises through the conduit, the dissolved gases water vapor, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide expand. The expansion forces the column up. Sometimes the gases simply escape as a slow plume. Sometimes the pressure is enough to throw rocks. CENAPRED has the official term for this kind of activity: exhalation. It is the word that turns a routine volcano into a slow respiration system above 30 million lungs. Each exhalation is a small release of pressure. 108 of them in a single day is a high count by yellow phase 2 standards. Unlike Claua's runny basalt fountains or Fuego's andesite paroxysms, Popocatépetl produces something different: andesite-dacite, high viscosity, gas-rich, slow to flow, quick to fragment. When the magma reaches the conduit, the dissolved gases expand. The column rises, sometimes a few hundred meters, sometimes several kilometers. The temperature inside the column is approximately 900 degrees Celsius, 1,650 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to ignite vegetation on contact. Hot enough to weld pumice to itself as it falls. That is what the wind is carrying right now over the towns east of the summit. To understand what is actually happening under the surface, look at where the magma is coming from. Popocatépetl sits on the Trans-Mexican Volcanic Belt, a chain of volcanoes that stretches across central Mexico. Underneath that belt, the Cocos Plate is sliding under the North American Plate at about 7 centimeters a year. The friction of that collision melts rock at depth. The molten rock rises through the crust. Some of it pools in chambers, some of it reaches the surface. Popocatépetl is one of the most active points along the entire belt. The chamber underneath has been breathing audibly for 32 years. The chamber underneath was breathing thousands of years before there was anyone alive to listen. Here is what is not making most headlines. Between 2,000 and 1,800 years ago, a village called Tetimpa lived on the northeast flank of Popocatépetl in what is now the state of Puebla. 3,000 to 4,000 people. 600 wattle-and-daub houses built on stone platforms. Each home framed a central patio. Inside the patio, a small shrine. Inside the shrine, a small clay effigy of the volcano they lived under. In the 1st century AD, the volcano erupted. Ash and pumice rained down on the village. Roofs collapsed. Houses were buried where they stood. Food was left in the storage bins. Charred plants were left in the fields. The people who survived walked away. The village was never rebuilt. Mexican archaeologists excavated the site beginning in 1993. They call it the Little Pompeii of Mexico. The northeast flank that the volcano buried in the 1st century AD is the same direction Protection Civil is warning about this week: Puebla, Estado de México, Morelos, 2,000 years apart. Same volcano. Same wind. And it is still not over. CENAPRED has not raised the alert, they have not declared a new phase, they have not announced an end to the recent activity. The crater is still glowing. The tremor is still being recorded. The exhalations are still continuing. The column above the volcano is still being watched. The question is not whether Popocatépetl is active. It is. The question is not whether CENAPRED is watching. They are. The question is whether the people who live downwind of the volcano, the residents of San Pedro Nexapa, Atlixco, Cholula, Tlamanalco, and the broader Puebla-Mexico City corridor are paying attention to the same daily bulletin CENAPRED has been publishing since 1994. The houses of Tetimpa are still buried under volcanic ash on the same flank, 2,000 years later, as a warning. The crater is glowing. The tremor is climbing. And 30 million people live between the volcano and the answer. If this story is worth telling, subscribe. We cover more of these every week.